Hey guys, what is up? E here. Today, I'm going to be talking about the fundamental issue with Linux and why it's a challenge for newcomers to fully integrate themselves with the Linux environment. Firstly, I'm going to talk about fragmentation and the amount of Linux distributions currently available in the Linux community. It's one of the biggest flaws, but also one of the biggest draws to Linux. You get to choose pretty much exactly what you want in terms of desktop environment, package manager, things of that nature. But for newcomers who are coming to Linux who are not as tech savvy, this is probably one of the worst things that they can be greeted with. People telling them to download Arch Linux. People telling them to go with all these different kinds of distributions, when in reality, the only thing that is different between distributions are package managers and desktop environments in the first place. With Arch, you have Pacman and you have the Arch repositories. With Debian and all the other kinds of distros out there, they have their own specific package managers. That is basically all that's different. And let's just be honest, people just coming to Linux are not going to be using the command line to install the majority of their applications. What they're going to be using is they're going to be using a GUI interface, which makes it easy, exactly how macOS offers on their systems. They're going to be using an app store of some sort, which makes Pop! OS attractive, which makes Manjaro and all these other Linux distributions attractive in the first place. They have GUI-friendly features, they have GUI installers, and they're good for newcomers, which once again is one of the biggest things that Linux fails at. And it's because newcomers have this gigantic pool of Linux distributions to choose from, so it makes you feel like you're looking at things from a 70,000 foot view. Everything seems very complicated, the details are super granular, and it's a huge put-off. Really what newcomers should be looking at are the three big main distributions. You have Ubuntu, Mint, Debian, and people who want to try an Arch-based distro, they can use Manjaro, things of that nature. They shouldn't have to deal with things breaking all the time, which is why I wouldn't recommend Manjaro or any Arch-based bleeding edge distribution to a newcomer to Linux, because it does add that level of complexity for the user itself. What I would recommend to new users is probably Ubuntu, Mint, Debian, these big name Linux distributions that have graphical user interfaces, that have GUI application package managers, whatever you want to call them, that have a GUI installer. And I've seen people in the Linux community recommend Arch Linux to people who are just coming to Linux. It's like, if you want to turn someone off of Linux, that is probably the number one thing to do, because they're going to have absolutely zero success. You set them up for failure. Like maybe if they already have a background, maybe they're in IT, maybe they're doing something related to technology and they do have that fundamental skill set already developed, then sure, I guess if they really want to get their feet wet and get down in the weeds, they can do that. But for your average person, like you're installing Linux on a computer, like Linux Lite, something like this, on an old 2008, 2009 computer for your grandma or something, don't install Arch. Your grandma is not a masochist. She does not want to be dealing with programs and applications breaking on her. For example, when my mom's Mac Mini, you could barely open Chrome on it, what I did was I installed Linux Mint on it. And guess what? She's had absolutely zero issues. Sure, she came from a macOS environment. Linux Mint is not the easiest transition, but she had used Windows computers before. This made the transition much easier. And guess what? That computer's been going solid for 2-3 years now. Not a single issue besides maybe printer issues have showed up. I wonder how far she would have made it if I installed Arch Linux on that. Probably not very far. So next time someone comes up to you or approaches you, or someone online is asking on a forum what Linux distribution they should go with, don't give them some spin-off of a spin-off of a spin-off. Give them something they can get their feet wet first with. And if they really want to make that jump to a distribution like Arch Linux, they can do that on their own. Introducing someone to the Linux ecosystem with Arch Linux when it's their very first Linux distribution is not a good idea. And people need to realize this, because this is also one of the big issues that I've had with Linux over the years. Compatibility, stuff like this. Features are not there that I want, or applications cannot run, or I can't play games, something like this. Things like this. have made it very hard to switch to Linux full time, and I'm still not on Linux full time. I run it on my laptops, I run it on things that I don't game on, but if I'm trying to game, it's still not a good experience for multiplayer. So I end up spinning up VMs if I'm using it, or I end up dual booting whenever I'm using Linux. It's just not at the point where most people can switch yet. And people need to realize that it has a 4% market share right now, which is completely great. Like 2 years ago, it was 2%. It's double within that time, and I'm sure it'll continue to grow. But don't try and put someone on Linux who you know it's not going to work out in the end for. You're just wasting your time, and you're turning someone away from it for life. Because what matters at the end of the day is first impressions. And if they have a bad first impression, interfacing with their machine using Linux, they are not going to want to use it again. Thank you. That's all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this little rant that I went on. Check out another one of my videos, and have a good day.